Hello, my friends. I'm Dr. Richard Caldwell, and at 88 years old, I've dedicated my entire career to understanding what keeps us healthy as we age. For over 6 decades, I served as a geriatric specialist and professor at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center, where I had the privilege of treating thousands of patients and conducting groundbreaking research on nutrition and aging. Even now, in what others call retirement, I continue consulting and sharing the wisdom I've gathered from a lifetime of caring for older adults. People often ask me, Dr. Caldwell, what's your secret? How do you maintain such energy and clarity at your age? The truth is, there's no magic pill or miracle cure. I simply apply the same evidence-based principles I've taught my patients for decades to my own life. That's why I wake up each morning excited to continue my research, write articles, and most importantly, share life-saving knowledge with people like you. Today, I want to address something that might surprise you, something that challenges what most people believe about healthy eating. We're going to talk about fruit. Yes, fruit. That supposedly innocent, natural food that everyone assumes is universally good for you. But here's what the food industry doesn't want you to know, and what I've discovered through decades of clinical experience. Fruit can be both your greatest ally and your most dangerous enemy, especially as we age. During my tenure as chief of geriatric medicine at UCSF, I encountered countless patients who lived exemplary lifestyles. They never smoked, rarely drank alcohol, exercised regularly, and followed what they believed were healthy diets. Yet they walked into my office with devastating diagnoses: type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, gout, and metabolic syndrome. The confusion in their eyes was heartbreaking. Dr. Caldwell, they would say, tears forming, I've done everything right. I eat so much fruit because it's healthy. How could this happen to me? After carefully analyzing hundreds of these cases, I discovered a shocking pattern. The very food they trusted most, the food they consumed in abundance because they believed it was nature's perfect medicine, was slowly poisoning their bodies. The culprit? Excessive fruit consumption, driven by decades of misleading nutritional advice. Let me share some stories that forever changed how I view fruit consumption in older adults. Mrs. Margaret Thompson, a vibrant 72-year-old retired teacher, came to my office complaining of severe fatigue and unexplained weight gain. Margaret prided herself on her healthy lifestyle. Every morning, she would prepare what she called her wellness breakfast: a massive fruit salad containing 2 bananas, a cup of grapes, half a cantaloupe, and a large glass of fresh orange juice. She believed this routine was purifying her system and providing essential vitamins. After 3 months of this regimen, Margaret's energy levels plummeted. She developed persistent brain fog and noticed her clothes becoming uncomfortably tight. Blood tests revealed devastating news: her hemoglobin A1C had skyrocketed to 8.2, firmly placing her in the diabetic range. Her liver enzymes were elevated, and her triglycerides had tripled. Margaret was stunned. But Dr. Caldwell, she whispered, I thought I was being so healthy. The reality was that Margaret was consuming nearly 80 grams of fructose every morning, equivalent to drinking multiple cans of soda. Her liver, already less efficient due to aging, couldn't process this massive sugar load. The fructose was being converted directly into fat, causing fatty liver disease and insulin resistance. Then there's Mr. James Rodriguez, a 69-year-old retiree who developed severe gout attacks. Every summer, James was a former marathon runner who maintained his fitness well into his 60s. He couldn't understand why he suddenly began experiencing excruciating joint pain that left him bedridden for days. During our consultation, James mentioned his summer ritual: consuming enormous quantities of cherries and grapes because he'd read they were anti-inflammatory. Some days, he would eat over 2 pounds of grapes while watching television, thinking he was doing his body a favor. What James didn't realize was that the massive fructose load from these fruits was being metabolized into uric acid, triggering the very gout attacks he was trying to prevent. After I explained the connection between excessive fructose and uric acid production, James reluctantly agreed to limit his fruit intake to small portions. Within 6 weeks, his gout attacks completely disappeared, and he hasn't had one since. Perhaps the most heartbreaking case was Mrs. Linda Watson, an 81-year-old grandmother who developed what she called the shakes. Linda had been consuming fruit smoothies twice daily for over 2 years, blending together mangoes, pineapples, bananas, and dates because her daughter convinced her it would boost her immune system and energy levels. Instead, Linda developed severe reactive hypoglycemia, Her blood sugar would spike dramatically after consuming these smoothies, then crash precipitously an hour later, leaving her weak, shaky, and confused. Her family was considering memory care facilities because they thought she was developing dementia. The truth was far simpler. Linda was experiencing severe blood sugar fluctuations that were affecting her cognitive function. I also want to share a deeply personal story that reinforced everything I'd observed in my practice. My own sister Helen was always the health-conscious one in our family. At 82, she swore by her daily ritual of eating what she called nature's candy, dried dates, figs, and apricots. She would consume handfuls throughout the day, believing these natural sweets were infinitely better than processed sugar. Over several months, Helen began experiencing severe fatigue, frequent urination, and an unquenchable thirst. When she finally agreed to see her doctor, the diagnosis was shocking: type 2 diabetes with dangerously high blood glucose levels. Helen's healthy dried fruit habit had been delivering concentrated sugar bombs to her system all day long. Each dried apricot contained the sugar equivalent of multiple fresh apricots, and she was eating dozens daily. This personal experience drove me to dive deeper into the research on fruit consumption and metabolic health in older adults. What I discovered challenged everything I thought I knew about fruit and nutrition. Now, let me be absolutely clear. Fruit itself isn't the enemy. The problem lies in how we've been taught to consume it in modern society. We've been conditioned to believe that because fruit is natural, we can eat unlimited quantities without consequence. This is one of the most dangerous nutritional myths of our time. The truth is that modern fruits have been selectively bred to be far sweeter than their ancient counterparts. A modern apple contains significantly more fructose than the apples our grandparents ate. Additionally, our sedentary lifestyles and aging metabolisms are far less equipped to handle large fructose loads than our ancestors, who performed manual labor and had more efficient metabolic systems. Let me explain exactly which fruits pose the greatest risks to your health, especially if you're managing diabetes, struggling with weight, or dealing with gout. The first fruit I must warn you about is pineapple. While delicious and rich in vitamin C and enzymes, pineapple is essentially nature's sugar bomb. A single cup of fresh pineapple contains over 16 grams of sugar and has a glycemic index of 66, which means it raises blood sugar almost as quickly as white bread. I treated Mr. Frank Sullivan, a 74-year-old who discovered he loved pineapple after his wife began buying it regularly. Frank would eat several slices with every meal, thinking the enzymes would aid his digestion. Within 3 months, Frank's blood pressure medication stopped working effectively, and his fasting glucose levels indicated prediabetes. The concentrated natural sugars in pineapple were overwhelming his pancreas's ability to produce adequate insulin. Pineapple is even more dangerous because it's often preserved in heavy syrup, multiplying the sugar content. Even juice-packed varieties concentrate the natural sugars to dangerous levels. If you love pineapple, limit yourself to 2 small pieces per week and never eat it alone. Always pair it with protein or healthy fats to slow sugar absorption. The second problematic fruit is bananas, particularly overripe ones. Bananas are often recommended for potassium, but what many don't realize is that as bananas ripen, their starch converts to sugar, dramatically increasing their glycemic impact. A large, spotted banana can contain over 25 grams of sugar and cause rapid blood glucose spikes. Mrs. Carol Peterson, a 70-year-old former nurse, came to me frustrated because her morning blood sugar readings were consistently elevated, despite following her diabetes management plan. During our discussion, Carol mentioned eating 2 large bananas every morning because she'd heard they prevented muscle cramps and provided sustained energy. What Carol didn't understand was that those bananas were delivering nearly 50 grams of sugar to her system first thing in the morning, before her metabolism was fully active. Her pancreas was struggling to produce enough insulin to handle this massive glucose load. Once we reduced her banana intake to half of a small, slightly green banana 3 times per week, her morning glucose readings normalized within 2 weeks. The third fruit that requires extreme caution is dates, whether fresh or dried. Dates are essentially nature's candy, containing an astounding amount of concentrated sugar. Just 3 medjool dates contain approximately 18 grams of sugar, equivalent to eating 4 teaspoons of table sugar. Mr. Thomas Anderson, an 83-year-old widower, had been snacking on dates throughout the day because his late wife had always kept a bowl of them on their kitchen counter. Thomas believed he was making a healthy choice by avoiding processed sweets. However, he was consuming 8 to 10 dates daily, delivering nearly 50 grams of sugar to his system in addition to his regular meals. Thomas developed severe inflammation markers. His triglycerides soared to over 400 milligrams DL, and he began experiencing the early stages of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. His liver was desperately trying to process the constant fructose overload by converting it to fat. Once Thomas eliminated dates from his diet, his liver enzymes normalized within 8 weeks, and his inflammatory markers dropped significantly. The fourth fruit that demands caution is dried cranberries, often marketed as a health food. Commercial dried cranberries are typically loaded with added sugar. Because cranberries are naturally very tart, a quarter cup of dried cranberries can contain over 20 grams of sugar, more than a candy bar. Mrs. Joyce Williams, a 68-year-old who prided herself on reading nutrition labels, began adding dried cranberries to her morning oatmeal, afternoon salads, and evening yogurt because she'd heard they prevented urinary tract infections. Joyce was consuming nearly a cup of dried cranberries daily, unknowingly ingesting massive amounts of added sugar. Within 4 months, Joyce developed insulin resistance. Her waist circumference increased by 4 inches, and she began experiencing afternoon energy crashes that left her exhausted. The very food she thought was protecting her urinary health was destroying her metabolic health. When we eliminated dried cranberries and replaced them with a small handful of fresh cranberries twice weekly, Joyce's energy stabilized and her weight began normalizing. Now, before you start thinking I'm completely against fruit, let me share the other side of the story. There are remarkable fruits that, when consumed correctly, can significantly enhance your health and longevity. The first fruit I enthusiastically recommend is blueberries. Often called nature's perfect superfood, blueberries are packed with anthocyanins, powerful antioxidants that protect brain function, improve memory, and reduce inflammation throughout the body. Unlike high-sugar fruits, blueberries have a relatively low glycemic index and won't cause dramatic blood sugar spikes. Mrs. Dorothy Chen, a 79-year-old retired librarian, was experiencing concerning memory lapses and difficulty concentrating. Her family was worried about early dementia. I suggested she incorporate a small handful of fresh blueberries into her daily routine. Dorothy was skeptical but agreed to try. After 6 months of eating approximately 1/3 cup of blueberries daily, Dorothy's cognitive function noticeably improved, her memory sharpened, her focus returned, and her family was amazed by the transformation. Recent brain scans showed improved blood flow to critical areas associated with memory and learning. Dorothy now calls blueberries her brain medicine and hasn't missed a day in over 3 years. The recommended amount is 1/3 to 1/2 cup of fresh blueberries daily. They're perfect as a topping for Greek yogurt, mixed into oatmeal, or eaten as a mid-afternoon snack. Frozen blueberries retain most of their nutritional value and are often more affordable than fresh varieties. The second fruit I strongly recommend is strawberries, which are surprisingly low in sugar compared to other fruits and incredibly rich in vitamin C, folate, and fiber. Strawberries also contain ellagic acid, a compound that has been shown to have anti-cancer properties and supports liver detoxification. Mr. George Patterson, a 76-year-old former engineer, was struggling with chronic inflammation following a minor surgery. His recovery was progressing slowly, and he was experiencing persistent joint stiffness and fatigue. I suggested he incorporate fresh strawberries into his anti-inflammatory protocol. George began eating 6 to 8 medium strawberries daily, along with other anti-inflammatory foods. Within 3 weeks, his inflammatory markers decreased significantly. His joint stiffness improved, and his energy levels returned to normal. George was so impressed that he now grows his own strawberries and credits them with accelerating his healing process. The ideal serving is 6 to 8 medium strawberries daily. They're excellent sliced into salads, blended into smoothies with protein powder, or simply eaten fresh. Always choose organic strawberries when possible, as conventional strawberries are heavily treated with pesticides. The third fruit I recommend with great enthusiasm is avocado. Technically a fruit though, most people think of it as a vegetable. Avocados are virtually sugar-free and packed with monounsaturated fats that actually improve insulin sensitivity and support cardiovascular health. They're also rich in potassium, fiber, and folate. Mrs. Sarah Martinez, a 73-year-old with concerning cholesterol levels, was reluctant to take statin medications due to previous side effects. I suggested she incorporate half an avocado into her daily diet, while making other modest dietary changes. Sarah was hesitant because she'd heard avocados were fattening. After 4 months of eating half an avocado daily, usually mixed into salads or spread on whole grain toast, Sarah's lipid profile improved dramatically. Her LDL cholesterol dropped by 32 points, her HDL cholesterol increased, and her triglycerides normalized. Her cardiologist was so impressed that he postponed medication recommendations, allowing Sarah to continue managing her cholesterol naturally. Half an avocado daily is the optimal amount. You can dice it into salads, mash it onto toast, or blend it into smoothies for creaminess without added sugars. Avocados are calorie-dense, so they should replace other fats in your diet rather than being added on top of your regular intake. The fourth beneficial fruit I recommend is raspberries, which are incredibly low in sugar but high in fiber and antioxidants. Raspberries contain ketones, natural compounds that may support healthy metabolism and weight management. They also provide ellagic acid and vitamin C in impressive quantities. William Foster, an 82-year-old struggling with digestive issues and irregular blood sugar, began incorporating a small handful of raspberries into his daily routine. At my suggestion, William had been experiencing constipation, bloating, and unpredictable glucose readings that made managing his prediabetes challenging. The high fiber content in raspberries helped regulate William's digestive system within days. More importantly, the low sugar content and high fiber helped stabilize his blood glucose levels throughout the day. William now enjoys 1/3 cup of raspberries daily and reports feeling more energetic and comfortable than he had in years. Now, let me share the 3 golden rules that can transform fruit from a potential health hazard into a powerful healing tool. These principles have been refined through decades of clinical experience and research, and they can make all the difference in how fruit affects your body. The first critical rule is timing. Always eat fruit either 30 minutes before meals or at least 1 hour after meals, never immediately after eating. This principle is based on fundamental digestive physiology that most people don't understand. When you eat a meal, your blood sugar naturally rises as your body digests carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If you immediately follow that meal with fruit, you're essentially adding fuel to an already burning fire. The additional fructose from fruit causes a secondary blood sugar spike that can overwhelm your pancreas's ability to produce adequate insulin. I remember Mr. Henry Adams, a 77-year-old who had excellent control of his type 2 diabetes, until he developed a habit of eating fruit immediately after dinner. Henry thought he was making a healthy choice by replacing dessert with fresh fruit. However, his evening glucose readings began spiking dangerously high, and his overall diabetes management deteriorated rapidly. When I explained the timing principle and Henry began eating his fruit portion 30 minutes before dinner instead, his post-meal glucose readings improved dramatically. The fiber in the fruit actually helped slow the absorption of sugars from his main meal, creating a much more stable blood sugar response. Eating fruit before meals can also provide natural appetite control. The fiber and water content help you feel satisfied with smaller portions of your main meal, supporting healthy weight management without feeling deprived. The second fundamental rule is portion control. Treat fruit as a small side dish, never as a meal replacement, and limit your total daily intake to what fits in your closed fist. This principle challenges the modern tendency to view fruit as unlimited healthy food. Many of my patients were shocked to learn that fruit is essentially a carbohydrate, nutritionally similar to bread or pasta in terms of its effect on blood sugar. The difference is that fruit comes packaged with beneficial nutrients, but that doesn't negate its impact on glucose and insulin levels. Mrs. Helen Crawford, a 66-year-old who was trying to lose weight, had been replacing breakfast with large fruit bowls containing bananas, apples, oranges, and grapes. Helen believed she was reducing calories and eating healthily. Instead, she was starting each day with massive sugar loads that left her hungry, craving sweets, and overeating at lunch. When I helped Helen restructure her eating pattern to include proper protein and healthy fats at breakfast, with just a small portion of berries, her cravings disappeared, her energy stabilized, as she lost 18 pounds over for months without feeling hungry or deprived. The closed fist rule provides a practical, visual guide for appropriate fruit portions. Your fist represents approximately 1 cup of food, which is the maximum amount of fruit you should consume in an entire day. If you want variety, eat smaller amounts of different fruits, but keep the total within that fist-sized limit. Remember, Fruit juice and dried fruits are concentrated sources of sugar that should be avoided entirely. A glass of orange juice contains the sugar of 4 to 6 oranges, without the beneficial fiber, creating a glucose tsunami in your bloodstream. Dried fruits remove water while concentrating all the sugars, making them essentially candy disguised as health food. The third essential rule is the tea ritual. Always follow fruit consumption with a cup of warm, unsweetened tea. This practice provides multiple health benefits that can dramatically improve how your body processes fruit sugars. Warm tea helps neutralize the cooling properties of fruit according to traditional medicine principle. Ease, supporting optimal digestion. More importantly, from a scientific perspective, certain teas contain compounds that can help moderate blood sugar responses and support liver function. Green tea contains catechins, particularly EGCG, which has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and help the body process sugars more efficiently. Ginger tea supports digestion and has anti-inflammatory properties that can counteract any inflammatory response from fruit sugars. Cinnamon tea contains compounds that may help lower blood glucose levels naturally. My wife, Catherine, has practiced this tea ritual for over 20 years. After eating her small daily portion of fruit, she always prepares a cup of warm ginger tea with a touch of cinnamon. Catherine maintains excellent metabolic health at age 84, with stable blood sugar, healthy weight, and abundant energy. She credits this simple ritual as one of her most important health habits. The tea also serves a psychological purpose. It creates a natural endpoint to your fruit consumption, preventing mindless overeating. The warm liquid helps you feel satisfied and reduces cravings for additional sweets. Choose pure teas without added sugars, honey, or artificial sweeteners. Let the tea cool to a comfortable drinking temperature and sip it slowly over 10 to 15 minutes. This mindful practice enhances digestion and creates a peaceful transition between eating and your next activities. Now, let me address some common questions and concerns about implementing these principles in your daily life. Many people worry about missing out on essential vitamins if they reduce their fruit intake. The truth is that vegetables provide most of the same nutrients as fruits without the high sugar content. Leafy greens, bell peppers, broccoli, and other vegetables often contain more vitamins and minerals per calorie than fruits. If you're concerned about vitamin C, consider that one medium red bell pepper contains more vitamin C than a large orange, without the blood sugar impact. If you're worried about potassium, vegetables like spinach, avocados, and tomatoes provide abundant potassium with additional nutrients and fiber. For those dealing with sweet cravings, remember that taste preferences can be retrained. Mr. Robert Kim, a 71-year-old patient, was initially resistant to reducing his fruit intake because he craved sweetness throughout the day. I suggested he gradually reduce portions while incorporating more herbs and spices into his meals to enhance flavor satisfaction. Within 6 weeks, Robert discovered that his sweet cravings had significantly diminished. He now finds that a few berries taste incredibly sweet and satisfying, whereas previously he would have needed much larger portions to feel satisfied. His palate had reset to appreciate subtle flavors and natural sweetness levels. It's also important to understand that hunger between meals often indicates blood sugar instability rather than actual nutritional needs. When you stabilize your blood sugar by moderating fruit intake and eating balanced meals with adequate protein and healthy fats, you'll likely find that constant hunger and cravings disappear naturally. Mrs. Betty Richardson, a 78-year-old who had been snacking on fruit throughout the day to manage what she thought was constant hunger, discovered that her frequent eating was actually perpetuating blood sugar swings that created more hunger. When she consolidated her fruit intake into one small portion daily and focused on protein-rich meals, her appetite naturally regulated, and she felt satisfied with less food overall. For those concerned about fiber intake, remember that non-starchy vegetables provide abundant fiber without the sugar load. Artichokes, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and leafy greens contain more fiber per serving than most fruits. You can easily meet your fiber needs through vegetables, nuts, seeds, and whole grains without relying heavily on fruit. If you're dealing with digestive issues, some fruits can actually worsen symptoms. High FODMAP fruits like apples, pears, and stone fruits can trigger bloating, gas, and digestive discomfort in sensitive individuals. Low FODMAP options like strawberries, blueberries, and small amounts of citrus fruits are often better tolerated. I want to address the emotional aspect of changing your relationship with fruit. Many of my patients feel grief when they realize they need to dramatically reduce foods they've loved and trusted for decades. Mrs. Nancy Lewis, a 75-year-old who had eaten large fruit salads daily for over 30 years, told me she felt like she was losing an old friend. I reminded Nancy that we weren't eliminating fruit entirely, just creating a healthier relationship with it. By treating fruit as a special treat rather than a dietary staple, she could still enjoy the flavors and nutrients while protecting her metabolic health. Nancy now looks forward to her small daily fruit portion and reports that she appreciates the flavors more intensely than when she was eating large quantities mindlessly. It's also crucial to understand that these recommendations become more important with age. Your metabolism naturally slows as you get older, your muscle mass decreases, and your insulin sensitivity often declines. What your body could handle at 40 or 50 may be too much at 70 or 80. Daniel Murphy, a 79-year-old former athlete, struggled with this concept initially. He remembered being able to eat anything he wanted during his competitive sports days and couldn't understand why the same foods were now causing problems. I explained that his body's needs and capabilities had evolved, just as his training had to evolve throughout his athletic career. Once Daniel accepted that optimal nutrition at 79 required different strategies than optimal nutrition at 29, he embraced the changes and experienced remarkable improvements in energy, sleep quality, and overall well-being. For those taking medications, it's essential to understand that fruit consumption can interact with various drugs. Grapefruit is well known for interfering with numerous medications, but other fruits can also affect drug metabolism. Always consult with your healthcare provider about potential interactions, especially if you're taking blood thinners, diabetes, medications, or blood pressure drugs. Mrs. Diane Foster, a 74-year-old taking warfarin for atrial fibrillation, experienced dangerous fluctuations in her blood clotting levels. We eventually traced the problem to her variable intake of vitamin K-rich fruits, like kiwis and grapes. Once Diane standardized her fruit intake to consistent, small portions, her medication levels stabilized, and her clotting parameters remained steady. I also want to address seasonal considerations. Many people dramatically increase their fruit consumption during summer months, when fresh fruits are abundant and appealing. However, this is precisely when you need to be most cautious, as the heat can already stress your cardiovascular system, and added blood sugar spikes can compound the problem. Charles Brown, an 85-year-old who was generally healthy, experienced severe dizziness and near-fainting episodes every summer. We discovered that Charles was consuming enormous quantities of watermelon, cantaloupe, and peaches during hot weather, thinking they would help him stay hydrated and cool. The reality was that the massive sugar loads were causing rapid blood sugar spikes followed by crashes, creating the dizziness and weakness he experienced. When Charles learned to hydrate with water and limit his summer fruit intake to small portions, his summer episodes completely resolved. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at processing large sugar loads, our kidney function may decline, and our liver's detoxification capacity diminishes. These physiological changes mean that foods we could tolerate when younger may now cause significant health problems. I've seen countless patients transform their health simply by implementing these 3 fruit consumption rules. The improvements often extend far beyond blood sugar control. Many report better sleep, increased energy, clearer thinking, reduced joint pain, and improved digestive function. Mrs. Rita Thompson, a 71-year-old who had been struggling with multiple health issues, implemented all 3 rules simultaneously. Within 2 months, Rita's blood pressure normalized, her chronic fatigue resolved, her digestive issues improved, and she lost 12 pounds without dieting. Rita told me, "Dr. Caldwell, I feel like I've gotten my life back. I had no idea that something as innocent as fruit was making me feel so terrible." For those ready to implement these changes, start gradually. Don't attempt to transform your entire relationship with fruit overnight. Begin by implementing the timing rule for 1 week, focusing on eating fruit at optimal times rather than changing quantities. During the 2nd week, begin practicing portion control, measuring your fruit intake and staying within the fist-sized limit. Use measuring cups initially until you can accurately estimate appropriate portions visually. In the 3rd week, add the tea ritual, experimenting with different herbal teas to find flavors you enjoy. This gradual approach allows your body and mind to adjust without feeling deprived or overwhelmed. Remember that these changes should complement, not replace, regular medical care. Continue working with your healthcare providers, especially if you're managing diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or other chronic conditions. Monitor your blood sugar, blood pressure, and other relevant health markers as you implement these changes. Some people worry about getting adequate nutrition with reduced fruit intake. The truth is that a well-planned diet with plenty of vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, nuts, seeds, and moderate amounts of whole grains provides all the nutrients your body needs. The small amount of fruit you'll continue eating will provide beneficial compounds without overwhelming your system with sugar. If you're currently consuming large amounts of fruit, expect an adjustment period as your taste buds and cravings adapt. Many patients report that within 2 to 4 weeks, their desire for sweet foods significantly decreases, and they begin appreciating more subtle flavors in their food. Paul Jackson, a 69-year-old who had been eating fruit constantly throughout the day, was amazed to discover that after a month of following these guidelines, he no longer craved sweets between meals. Paul's energy became steady throughout the day, his afternoon fatigue disappeared, and he lost 15 pounds without making any other dietary changes. I want to emphasize that these recommendations are particularly crucial for anyone with prediabetes, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, gout, or fatty liver disease. However, even healthy older adults can benefit from implementing these principles to prevent future health problems and maintain optimal metabolic function. The research supporting these recommendations continues to grow. Recent studies have shown that excessive fructose consumption is linked not only to diabetes and obesity, but also to cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, and accelerated aging at the cellular level. By implementing these simple fruit consumption rules, you're protecting yourself against multiple age-related health conditions simultaneously. As I reflect on my 60-plus years in medicine, I'm struck by how simple changes can have profound impacts on health and longevity. The patients who thrive in their later years aren't those who follow complicated protocols or take dozens of supplements. They're the ones who consistently apply fundamental principles like proper fruit consumption, adequate sleep, regular movement, and stress management. Mrs. Agnes O'Connor, now 89 years old, has been following these fruit consumption guidelines. For over 8 years, Agnes maintains stable blood sugar, healthy weight, sharp mental clarity, and remarkable energy for her age. She recently told me, Dr. Caldwell, learning to eat fruit properly was the single most important change I made for my health. One wish I had known this information 30 years ago. It's never too late to start implementing these changes. Whether you're 60, 70, 80, or beyond, your body will respond positively to proper fruit consumption. The key is consistency and patience. Give your body time to adjust and heal from years of potential fruit overconsumption. I encourage you to start today with one small change. Tonight, if you typically eat fruit after dinner, try waiting 1 hour instead. Tomorrow morning, if you usually drink fruit juice, replace it with whole fruit in the recommended portion size. These small adjustments will begin the process of metabolic healing immediately. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate fruit entirely, but to consume it in a way that supports rather than undermines your health. Fruit can and should be part of a healthy aging diet when consumed wisely and in moderation. As we conclude today's discussion, I want you to consider this. What if the simple act of changing how you consume fruit could add years to your life and life to your years? What if this one modification could help you avoid diabetes, reduce inflammation, improve your energy, and enhance your cognitive function? The choice is yours. You can continue following outdated nutritional advice that treats all natural foods as automatically healthy, or you can embrace the wisdom that comes from decades of clinical experience and scientific research. Next week, I want to share equally important information about nuts, another food that most people consume incorrectly. I'll reveal which nuts can dramatically improve your brain function and heart health, and which ones might be secretly sabotaging your metabolism. I'll also share the optimal timing, preparation methods, and portion sizes that can transform nuts from a high-calorie snack into a powerful longevity food. The stories I'll share about patients who transformed their health through proper nut consumption will surprise you, and the research on nuts and cognitive function in older adults will give you hope for maintaining sharp mental clarity throughout your later years. Until then, I challenge you to implement just one of today's fruit consumption rules. Pay attention to how your body responds. Notice changes in your energy levels, sleep quality, and overall well-being. Your body will thank you for finally giving it what it truly needs rather than what food marketing has convinced you it wants. Thank you for joining me today. If this information has been helpful, please share it with people you care about. Together, we can help more people discover the truth about healthy aging and optimal nutrition. Remember, it's never too late to start taking better care of yourself. Your future self will thank you for the changes you make today.